Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
I'm just going to keep on talking.
Well, I kind of need you to.
That is the premise of the show.
Well, as most of you know, or I hope you know.
You've been listening very well.
Well, not that they've been listening. This coming Thursday is Halloween.
Yeah, I believe that tracks, yeah.
Yeah. It's right on track. Yep, October 31st every year is Halloween.
Ooh.
No matter when you trick-or-treat or don't trick-or-treat or go to your church for your fall festival or whatever you want to call it.
Or my favorite, the trunk or treat.
Trunk or treat. Well, we are the podcast to battle misinformation and miseducation and all around willful ignorance.
Bingo.
Right. And when it comes to Halloween, along with other holidays that us as Americans and several other countries around the world like to celebrate, they may not have the history or implication or purpose that is generally accepted as truth.
Or fact.
Right. So this will be part one of a series that we're going to be doing, not consecutively. They'll come around each time that there is a holiday that fits the criteria. But this is going to be part one of our pagan roots. Go ahead and give us a little explanation of that, Kevin.
Oh, thank you, Will. If you've been a dedicated listener, which I hope all of you are, and if not, there's still time, don't worry. We've been foreshadowing this for several weeks, several months now, that the closer we got to the holiday season, we were going to start a series that explored the pagan roots that we have in our traditions, namely our holidays. Growing up in the South, you get this place is known as the Bible Belt, due to the perceived notion that most people are Christian.
Just like there's a Dollar General around every corner, there's a Baptist church around every corner.
Oh, yeah, there's I know you go down one road, there's 3 churches within like a block of each other. But anyway, growing up in the South, and I'm sure in other places too, but predominantly here, with such a strong religious influence. Growing up, Will, you can probably attest to this as much as I do, Halloween was, in certain groups and certain circles, demonized for being, a pagan holiday, or you're worshiping the devil, or
It's the devil's day.
or the devil's birthday, and all these and the only word I can use, without, messing with our our explicit rating, is ignorant, and there are other choice words I would prefer to use, but
I don't feel like putting the bleeps in to post editing, okay?
it's just extra work. You got to do a lot of clicking, I understand.
Yeah.
Halloween, as many people would know, especially our listeners over in the British Isles, is based on a Celtic pagan festival known as Samhain, which means summer's end. And in its most basic definition is a celebration of the end of summer, the end of the harvest season, and a celebration of the time when you're getting less daylight and you're getting more darkness. You're starting to notice, hey, days are getting shorter, the nights are getting longer. During this festival, the ancient Celts believed that the barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead was at its thinnest. And during this night, you could cross over. The dead could come into our world and vice versa. Now, the festival of Samhain predates Christianity by roughly 2,000 years. So there's really no way they could have been worshiping Satan 2,000 years before Christianity told us there was the devil. That's just basic math coming from a history buff who doesn't care for math. The numbers let you know right there from the beginning. Now, many cultures around the world have a festival, a celebration, a holiday, if you will, during or roughly around this time period when you start to have the shorter days and longer nights. that honor the dead, that celebrate the harvest, and one of the most famous ones outside of the Celtic festival of Samhain is the Day of the Dead.
Dia de los Muertos.
See, now, like I said, these days are meant to honor the dead, and not to make fun of death, but to embrace the inevitability that we can't escape it.
Like with the Day of the Dead, the most well-known imagery for the Day of the Dead are the sugar skulls,
Right.
and they're floral patterned and all kinds of other stuff where it's
Bright and colorful.
right. It's pretty. It's not scary, and that's because they celebrate death as just another part of life.
Right.
You know, they're celebrating their loved ones going into the next phase of life.
Right. And it's very, very much so meant to honor those who have gone ahead of us. Now, with Christianity, once it starts to spread, and it spreads kind of slow, but once it starts to take hold in Europe, it starts to go like wildfire. People are eating this stuff up left and right.
Well, I mean, when you spread Christianity at the tip of a sword, it kind of does tend to do that.
Yeah, you got a pretty high conversion rate there.
A lot of people tend to agree with you when you're holding a weapon to them.
You know, it's odd how that works, you know.
Right.
Anyway, like many of our traditions, they evolve over time. It's not somebody sat down like, all right, on October 31st, this is what we're going to do. It takes time, and it takes a lot of time, and it's very slow going. So in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III, he designates November 1st as All Saints' Day to celebrate all the saints who have come and gone. Very much so like how we in America celebrate President's Day. So instead of having to celebrate all these different presidents on their birthdays, we pick one day, we get off from work if you're lucky, and we celebrate all the presidents. You know, one and done, get back to work. So that's what Pope Gregory III decides to do. We're going to designate this day to celebrate the saints. So eventually that becomes All Hallows Day, which celebrates the dead in Christ who have gone before us. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Mm-hmm.
So the day before All Hallows Day is All Hallows Eve.
Right.
It makes sense, right?
Halloween. Wonder where they got that from.
So we fast forward a few more centuries, and now you're probably starting to wonder, why do we go door to door and ask people for treats? At this time, when Christianity is spreading, there's only one church, the Catholic Church, and they have a a death grip on religious affairs and the areas they're influencing. Some would say controlling, but anyway.
I mean, it's not like they were a government and a religion. Oh, wait.
They still are.
They're the only government that is a religion, as far as I'm aware.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Vatican.
At least the only one that's recognized as an entire state to itself, even by the UN.
Which is just kind of mind-boggling, but we'll cover that later.
That's a different episode entirely.
So you start to get with the Catholic Church absorbing these traditions instead of wiping them out and like, no, you're going to celebrate this, to help convert people over wholly, not just I held a sword to you and you said, all right, I'm Christian now. We're going to start, influencing your life.
You said holy. Was the pun intended?
A little bit. So they start to absorb traditions in local areas to help convert people over, to help kind of ease the transition, if you will. So in Celtic societies, which was one of the last places in Europe to really receive Christianity, mainly due to their geography, they kind of take this festival of Samhain, which just happens to coincide nicely with these All Hallows Day. I wonder how that worked out. People begin going door to door on All Souls Day, what's known as an All Souls Day parade. And these are poor people who don't have anything. They're starving. And they'll go door to door and they'll make a promise to you. Like, if you feed me, I'll pray for some of your dead relatives. Now that's significant because during the time, if you believed your loved ones were in purgatory, if you received enough prayers, their souls could be taken up to heaven.
That's a Catholic thing. For
Yeah.
those who don't know, that's
If
a
you didn't
Catholic
know.
thing.
Remember, at this point, the Catholic Church is the only church.
Right.
They kind of
Well,
got
the
them
only Christian church.
Christian
There,
church.
there
fair
was
point.
only one denomination of Christianity at the time because Martin Luther had yet to
nail that stuff on
Yeah.
the door. So they got a monopoly on this, right? And they're making bukus of money. So that's where the tradition of going door to door asking for treats eventually comes into it. So now you're probably wondering, well, why do we celebrate this in America? This sounds like all this happens over in Europe. However, if you think about it, where do we all come from? Now, if you recall in history class, if you paid any kind of attention,
even though they misinformed you.
a lot. Many of us descend from European immigrants, and immigrants from other places as well. But it seems like in this day and age, a lot of people forget that many people are descendant of European immigrants.
Or at least the original immigrants to the United States were mostly European.
Right. They like to forget that part. So with Europeans coming over, they don't just bring themselves and their clothes and their families. They bring their traditions, their beliefs. A lot of European immigrants came over were Irish, Scottish, English, the likes. So they're all from the British Isles. So when they came over, they brought their traditions. One of them being Samhain, or the Celtic festival. It eventually morphs into our holiday of Halloween.
This is Halloween. This is Halloween.
Now, it didn't take off right away. As I mentioned before, traditions take time and generations to develop. The first Halloween that can be notated as having occurs on October 31st, 1920, in Anoka, Minnesota. And I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't, sorry, southern accent.
Oh, yeah, and there were so many devil worshippers in 1920, let me tell you.
Oh, quite a few.
Right.
Quite a few. This is what many would deem as mischief night, where you have very unruly children going around causing a lot of problems, property damage, getting into trouble, and just all around in a pursuit of having fun are causing adults a lot of problems. So you have a lot of leaders, community leaders, some church leaders, start to push forward with, we need to give them something more to do on this night that's constructive, that's not violent, that doesn't cause property damage. And so they start to pull from all these traditions brought over by Irish and Scottish immigrants. And we have our first Halloween celebrated. Now, that happened in 1921. Historically speaking, the first Halloween costume isn't sold until 1930 by Sears and Roebuck. So it takes time to catch on. Well, from there, moving forward, we've developed this what many people would call a tradition started by the candy factory, candy companies.
Right.
But it has a much more complex history. It spans several generations, literally thousands of years and generations, and it's one that I'm very proud to continue on today, being of Irish descent. And it really irritates me that even in this day and age, with information that's just a click away,
you literally hold the breadth of human information in your pocket.
in your pocket. You carry it around with you every day.
And all you want to do is watch cat videos on YouTube and play Fortnite.
I mean, it's frustrating, and I'll get off my soapbox, but
I won't. That's the whole reason why we have a podcast is for me to have a freaking soapbox, okay?
however.
I mean, am I wrong?
No,
Am I
you're
wrong?
right. You're
Okay.
quite right. I bet you enjoy hearing that. But anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it's one of these things as we combat misinformation, miseducation, all around willful ignorance. You are willfully ignorant of these, especially in the South.
You cannot blame your high school history teacher
No.
because you have chosen to take what they said as truth.
If you were privy to education such as Will and myself, your high school history teacher was probably some kind of coach, maybe the driver's ed teacher.
Yes.
So yeah, you maybe didn't get the greatest historical education that is needed to understand this. But because this has been a holiday for nearly a century.
Now, granted,
Mm-hmm.
if you're listening to this podcast and you're hearing us right now talk about it, we're probably not talking to you at this point about you,
Right,
quote unquote,
Air
air
quotes.
quotes, right, being the willfully uneducated when you have a breath of knowledge because you actually went to the trouble to look up a podcast that literally at the beginning of this podcast in the first few episodes told you what we were going to do, what our goal was.
And we might or probably would offend you.
Right, yeah, right. And I'm sure we definitely have.
And we'll continue to do so.
We continue to do so, and I have no sympathy for you.
I'm not sorry.
Right. But we're not necessarily talking to y'all when we say this, but if you let your education stop at what you're required to get, whether it be high school or you chose to go to college, blah, blah, blah. If you let your education stop at whatever anyone ever told you, you're doing yourself a huge disservice because, especially now, you can learn anything you want.
You just have to want to.
You actually just, all you got to do is push a few buttons and you're there.
Click, 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 click. Here
Right.
it is.
Or download a podcast.
Right. Tell your friends about it. And pardon the rant earlier, but that was growing up in the South. This is something I have heard my entire life of just willfully spitting out this ignorance to young children, scaring them into not wanting to celebrate in a uniquely American holiday.
Halloween is of the devil. You need to go to church on Halloween night and be at church to do your trick-or-treating. This is of the devil.
And it's one of these things of just...
Like, I feel like I'm quoting the Water Boy.
Right.
It's
Halloween
the devil.
is the devil.
Halloween is the devil.
Yeah, it's one of these things. It really gets under my skin, and not many things do. But it's one thing to have your beliefs, and that's your business. But once you go around spreading lies, ignorance, misinformation,
Willful ignorance is all it is.
you're doing a disservice to everyone you talk to. And as Will said, we're not necessarily talking to you, the listener, at this moment.
We might be in this
Well, it
instance
might be.
because this isn't necessary. I mean, it is history. It's not traditional history, though.
Right.
So, people who listen to this may go along with what these holidays are traditionally standing for.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that if we have not offended you yet,
Just wait.
this our pagan roots may offend you a little bit, but don't take it personally.
It's not.
Don't get upset with us.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally just the messengers. We're telling you what you have not, what everyone else has failed to tell you about why we really do
Have these traditions.
and
it's an amazing story of traditions that have been passed down from generation to generation for centuries.
right.
That literally crossed an ocean and set up roots in a new continent. And it's something that we as Americans...
I feel like we're doing a disjustice to ourselves and our what was it, forebears or
Forefather.
Well, forefathers usually people think about like little George,
Little George there.
sitting over here. We have a little pop figure of George Washington sitting on the desk here while we record.
He's always staring at us.
Right. I just feel like we're doing a disservice to that by letting this stuff propagate.
Right.
You're. Let's be clear, and this will probably offend some of you.
Here we go.
The reason that your pastor tells you that Halloween is of the devil and you need to come to church,
Because he wants you to come to church.
because he wants you to come to church.
That's kind of
How does he get paid? By you being at church, you tithing and you donating. Of course, he wants you at church as much as possible.
And in a sense, you can't be that mad at him because that's what his job is to spread this, the message of Christianity.
But it don't say in the Bible that Halloween is of the devil. So why are you letting some dude just tell you something that he thinks is what it is?
He's giving you his view on something,
Right.
and you're taking it as gospel truth.
gospel truth. Air quotes.
Air quotes. Where it's, it's one of the things, and I guess because, of being of Irish descent, it's one of these things of anything pagan is seen as, satanic.
Right.
And it's the furthest thing from the truth. Paganism, by and large, has an emphasis on nature. Worshiping nature, being respectful of the earth.
It may not be Christian, but it's not just something that's not Christian is not satanic by default.
Right, and
it has to be of Satan to be satanic.
It's either black or white. It's either the devil or it's not.
No, I'm not. I'm agnostic, so I'm not Christian, and I'm not Christian. Whatever.
And I'm deist. Look it up.
He's a Reformed Catholic.
I'm gonna. Never mind.
But to Christians, those that are, for lack of a better way to put it, ignorant of God, aren't by default followers of Satan. So if this is pre-Christianity to that area of the world, that it can't by default be satanic because they don't.
Right. At that point, the concept of Satan had not yet reached these people.
Right. So
how could they worship what they did not know?
This was not intended to go into being a religious discussion, but I guess it kind of lends itself to it because
we have to hit on at some point.
We have to because of the pagan roots. We have to talk about the differences between the two.
But one of the biggest things for this series of pagan roots is to show you that these traditions we follow, they didn't just start one day with Christianity. That people all around the world have this deeper connection to their ancestors and traditions that can really be very enriching and fulfilling in your life to know about where you come from, the people who paved the way for you to be here. And
just looking at the fact that the first Halloween wasn't until 1921, if it was a
century.
Christian holiday or anti-Christian holiday,
right.
It would have come over as such at the founding of our country, as opposed to how many years later?
Roughly 200.
Exactly. So it would have been from the start that, instead of all of a sudden it's of the devil.
Yeah. To give you a little foreshadowing, in early American society, the celebration of Christmas was actually outlawed, but we'll get more to that later.
Yes, we got to hit Thanksgiving first. But yes, Christmas is coming. Valentine's Day is coming.
Easter.
And Easter's going to be the finale of our pagan roots.
The cherry on top, if you will.
The cherry on top, and the one will lose us some listeners, I'm sure.
I'm sure this one will lose some of
Oh, well.
We're here to...
Right, we're here to do what we do.
So
don't shoot the messenger. We're just telling you what no one else has the cojones to tell you about Dia de los Muertos and Halloween. But just like we always tell you, don't take our word for it.
Please don't.
Look it up. You'll find what you seek.
It's a quick Google search away.
And you have a phone in your pocket that has access to all of what we're telling you.
And you're probably listening to it on your phone, right? This podcast on your phone right now.
Right. You could look it up literally while we're talking about it. So as always, we don't want you to take what we say. We want you to form your own opinions, do your own research. And as always, trust, but verify.